Create with Fran Sidney. Hello everyone, welcome to the show. This is Fran Sidney and this is Create with Franz. We are on episode 152 and today we have an amazing guest all the way from Toronto and his name is Paul Norrish. Hello Paul and welcome to the show.
Hi Franz, thanks for having me.
Yes, it's good to have you. Today we have a very good topic and it's something I would like you to introduce a little bit, but it talks about this self-confidence that is missing in us professionals trying to get where we want and we can't get there. So it's about beliefs and attitude and feelings, all these behaviors that we have. So you do something called remedial hypnosis and conversational hypnosis. What is the problem that you are going to talk about today?
Yeah, so typically what I tend to help people with is purpose-driven professionals who want to break through the overwhelming self-doubt, worry, and fear that are preventing them from stepping into their true potential and basically being who they know they're capable of being. So these are people that, they've got the skills, they've got the talent, they've got the passion, but it's like something is getting in their way, something is stopping them, and they're a lot of times not sure exactly what that might be. They just know that when they go to take action, they experience resistance, hesitation, avoidance, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, and this is happening to a lot of people, self-doubt, I'm not really sure. And maybe they go and try all sorts of things, yoga, breathwork, meditation, therapy, hypnosis, CBT, anti-anxiety, and nothing works. So can you give me any example of a typical situation where these problems arise? For example, at work, a typical example that you can't go forward at work because you are blocked. You think you cannot. I have a lot of people that come in and they say, Franz, I can never go to the next step. My colleagues are moving forward and I can't. I don't believe I can go to my boss. I don't believe in myself. And as soon as I approach him, he just shuts me down and I can't talk. Is that something that happened to you as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So the way I look at it is when people want to move to the next level or they want to stretch or they want to expand, situations that I could use as an example might be like moving into a new role at work, or it could be even being asked to do a certain project. What sometimes happens when people try to level up their game is that old patterns from their past are triggered. And a lot of the times we can navigate our way through life without having to come up against these patterns. We find ways to avoid them, or maybe we just don't move in the direction where we have to be faced with those things. But yeah, what I found with the people I typically work with is these are people who want to expand, they want to stretch, they want to move to the next level, but in doing so, that triggers something inside of them that ends up blocking them. So it's like one part of them really wants to move in that direction, but then another part of them is at the same time saying, well, are you sure? Do you really want that? Because there's that fear, there's that self-doubt, that worry, that uncertainty that all of a sudden is bubbling up to the surface.
Mm-hmm. Yes, if I were talking to Mike Mandel, and I'm a grad of his school of hypnosis, Ericksonian hypnosis, he would say that that's the ego or the ego. So we have lots of egos, we have lots of personalities, 20, 30, 100 personalities. So which one is executive is what matters.
Right.
He would say, if you, for example, are a CEO of a big company, but at home you were bullied by your older brother, sometimes you might be in the office with your dependents and suddenly the wrong personality comes in and you can't do anything because the ego of a little child is stepping in. That's a very basic example here, just to make it very simple. So it's just deciding which ego is executive in the moment where you want it. So the creative one, the executive, the caring one. And so they're not going into the wrong place to disturb your life. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I like that. I'm familiar with Mike Mandel's I forget what he calls them exactly, is like ego identities or ego states, is it?
The ego states, yes.
Ego states, yeah. And yeah, one of the ways I think about that is we have these, it's almost like these parts of ourselves that break off when we're younger. Maybe we find ourselves in a situation that's overwhelming or difficult to deal with, or a lot of the times when we're younger, we might have certain feelings that come up as a result of what we're experiencing. And because the experience that we're going through is so overwhelming, we're either not able to feel those feelings to completion, or maybe we don't feel like we're allowed to express ourselves, right? So maybe you feel anxious or sad, but if you express yourself in that way, there might be certain repercussions. So it's almost like these parts get formed in order to deal with those types of situations, and they almost take on their own identities in ways. So for me, in the work that I do, it's really about helping people to integrate those parts that we could say maybe are like broken off or have become separate, and help the person to integrate those parts back into themselves as a whole, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. I just wanted to say, is that something you do like in one meeting, or do you work for a month with a person? How does that work, you to balance this personality so we can improve our attitude, so we can have a mastery of the skills that we want, and we can feel better about ourselves? Does it take a long while to be, for example, I want to be more productive? Is it something you do in a specific amount of time?
Yeah, great question. So when I'm working with my clients, typically we're working in as little as 1 to 2 sessions. So I work with my clients for as long as they need in each session itself, because we might as well get the work done if we're going to dig in deep. But what I found is, in a lot of cases, almost all cases, what's happening when somebody has a problem, or even sometimes when it seems like they have several different issues, is that there will be 1 or 2 things underneath all of that. Usually it's a feeling. It could be an internal conflict, like a polarity, like 2 parts of them pulling in 2 separate directions. And so a big part of what I do with people is actually finding whatever that is. What is it that's underneath? What's at the core of this problem that's presenting in their life? And when we resolve that, it's like a house of cards. Everything else collapses. So a lot of the times it may seem like, oh, it's I got this issue, I got this issue, I got this issue, I got this issue, when in reality, all those different things are just manifestations of something much deeper. And that's why things can resolve in a relatively short period of time.
Yes, that makes sense. How long have you been doing this? It's amazing work, isn't it?
Yes, it's absolutely amazing. So I've been practicing for around 10 years, I believe. I've been studying hypnosis for over 15 years, and self-development, and, just always looking for those unconventional ways where people can expand, or even, I'd say, become more of who they are. How do I put this? Become more of who they are without those limitations, those restrictions getting in their way.
Mm-hmm. I interview also one of your trainers, Stephen Blake, because I see you're with Old Pain to Go as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And you do Melissa Tears, and I work with some of her tools, for example, bilateral stimulation. So you have a huge array of tools. And if I were a person coming to you and say, okay, I have this problem and I don't understand where it comes from, would you be able to tell them straight away? Or do you need to do hypnosis or a conversation to come to see what is this root or reason of a problem?
Yeah, great question. So a big part, I'd say most of what I'm doing with my clients in session is to, just uncover what it is that's actually the problem. Because once we uncover what the actual problem is, even just bringing that into somebody's awareness in itself may be all that's necessary in order for the problem to transform. Because in a lot of cases, what people think the problem is, it's not. It's not actually what the problem is. I was actually doing an interview with a past client today who came to see me because they had frustration when it came to learning Spanish. They moved to Spain. They're from the UK, and they were experiencing some frustration there. Well, it turns out that it had very little to do with the frustration. It was actually to do with this person's passion around learning and understanding, and how they weren't able to understand or learn as quickly as they would have liked to. And that was creating a conflict as a result. So yeah, I'd say a big part of it is uncovering what the real problem is. And then from there, we decide what direction to go.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the relationship then between stress and our inability to get where we want? So in our mind, we want to do it. We have a plan, but somehow all this pressure of everyday life and things happen. And I always think, why people are so stressed? I don't think they are seeing clearly where we're going. And sometimes we do a lot of stuff that is emergency stuff, but we're not doing the important stuff. Does that make sense to you? And so do you think there is a big chunk of stress that is making us thinking in a way that is not clear? So we're not sleeping well, we're not peaceful, we're not relaxed, we're kind of tense, and therefore we are in fight or flight, and then we're not really taking the right decision.
For sure, yeah. So the way I like to look at stress is there's how would I put it? There's realistic stress, right? We can all find ourselves in stressful situations. Then there's also useless stress. So what I find tends to happen with people is you can find yourself in a stressful situation. Let's say you're going through a transition at work, or maybe you're exiting a relationship, or you're moving. That can cause a lot of stress for probably most people. But those situations can also trigger what I would consider useless stress, which is those old patterns, those old limitations. And so now that person's not only experiencing the normal everyday stress that anybody might encounter in those situations, they're also pulling in all this stuff from their past, or what they imagine might happen in the future. And that's the stuff that you want to deal with and get out of the way, because that stuff just really doesn't need to be there, right? Normal everyday stress, there's a lot of things like you mentioned that obviously you can practice: meditation, exercise, nutrition. I'm pretty sure all of us know that by now, but it's that extra stuff that gets pulled into the mix that doesn't need to be there, that I feel like we could all benefit from ridding ourselves from. So
yes, and very recently I've been having some discovery calls with some possible future clients, and we see these amazing people. We got the looks, we got the smartness, they are educated, they come from a good family, they got a good environment. From outside, you think they have it all. Yet they're stuck in the house, they can't get out, they can't get a job, they're dizzy, they have meltdowns, they have anxiety, they have panic attacks, they can't get to anything. And these are really clever, smart people that are super capable and super stuck in their mind. Oh, that's not a very good sound to make. And sometimes I wonder have you noticed that perhaps in the last 4 to 5 years, people are more stressed and more unable to feel peaceful? Because that's what I noticed.
yeah, it could be. I mean, we're super connected now. We have access to so much information. I think people are also becoming more aware of themselves, and perhaps reflecting upon themselves, looking inwards more. Not everybody, of course, but some people. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of reasons to be stressed. And it's interesting how one of the things that really interests me is how we as human beings can get tangled up in our own knots, and in a lot of ways cause our own issues unknowingly. So it can be very helpful. Obviously, I know probably with the work that you do with clients, just to even have somebody on the outside being able to help people navigate, get some clarity of what is it that's actually causing the stress, and find some resolution.
Yes. Well, in many of my clients, this is exactly, that's the point. We are inundated by so much information and all this connection, people texting, people wanting us to do things, and it's hard to sometimes be connected to who we are and what we want. And we might have unwanted thoughts, intrusive thoughts that are coming maybe from some old beliefs that we developed because we were rejected in the last job, or maybe even younger, and we feel like this lack of confidence is intrusive and it keeps coming on everything, and so it is cluttering our way of thinking, isn't it? And it is very, very hard. And some people become really exhausted, but it really is this story coming in their mind, and they believe it. They believe it. And I have people in my family, no names made, who think, oh, I can't do this and I can't do that. It's a story, it's a mantra, and they repeat it so much, they believe it. And I always firmly believe that if we keep saying to ourselves, oh, I'm not good enough for this, I'm too slow, or I'm too whatever, or I'm not enough for this and that, the mind will say, okay, that's what you believe, so that's going to happen, because we don't have a faith to make it happen, so the mind cannot create that picture that we are successful. And if we don't believe it, and if we don't believe in ourselves, we can't feel confident, so of course we're going to be stressed and worried all the time, and maybe end up with medication, which most times it doesn't really make us feel better because the root issue is still there.
Just creating what do they call it, like a Band-Aid solution or temporary fix. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, the stories that we tell ourselves, and with every story there's some there can be limitations to the stories that we tell ourselves in a lot of cases, for sure.
Many years ago, I was talking, when I was just new in RTT world, one of my colleagues gave me a session because we were all practicing, and I said, just work on this issue. I can't remember what it was. And then I said, the issue is because of this and that. And then I went to hypnosis, and then at a certain point, I was telling her what I thought was going on, my interpretation of the story. And then she said these words, Franz, which story do you have to tell yourself to be able to move on from this? Because
right.
As long as you keep going with this story, you can't move on. And it's really this story that makes a huge difference, isn't it? It's having that bouncing board, a coach or a mentor or a therapist working with you to make you see, actually, if I just stop telling this to myself, I might be able to give myself a chance to get better, like Stephen Blake said. And I had 2 or 3 episodes recorded with Stephen about why we have chronic pain and a lot of stuff, And in many, many cases, not all, it is the story that we tell ourselves that we can't do this and this is impossible. So we have about 10 minutes, and I wanted to say, if a person came to you and let's say we're not wanting a session now, but we wanted to have some general tips to be able to detach from this negative thinking, to feel better generally, be able to relax better, be more in control of their life, which is the thing that you promise in your website. And it's quoting from you. What would you suggest if they do, like, step 1, step 2? Do you have anything different from everyone else, or are you just like everyone else, like exercise, walk in the sunshine?
Yeah, got it. Yeah, so 2 things I'll say to that is, 1, is that most people, what they'll do is they'll teach you how to work with something on the back end. What I mean by that is, like, you're already experiencing the problem, let's say anxiety, overthinking. You're already experiencing your overthinking, the anxiety that goes along with that. What can you do to remedy that? Journal, meditation, eat well, exercise, all of those things. What I would recommend to people is you really want to get in front of the anxiety itself. You want to actually turn the tap off that's causing that anxiety to happen in the first place. Because until you do that, it doesn't really matter what you do on the back end. That anxiety is always going to find new ways to pop up again. The second thing I'd say is, and this is probably the biggest realization I've had working with clients, is, and use this for overthinking, because a lot of people think that in order to resolve or decrease their overthinking, they need to work on the thinking itself. They need to change their thoughts. They need to think better thoughts or think more rationally or whatever it might be. When it's really, I found, the feeling itself. It's the fact that you're feeling anxious in the first place. It's the state that you find yourself in that feeds those thoughts or allows those thoughts to come up. I have never come across somebody who has an issue with overthinking who isn't also at the same time feeling anxious or worried or overwhelmed or frustrated, right? It's the states that drive our thinking. So one thing that people can put into practice just in their own life is, if you find yourself overthinking or going up into your head, going into your mind, you can definitely work on your mindset. But until you start changing the way that you feel, it's probably going to be an uphill battle. So work on changing your state, work on changing the way that you feel. And one of the best ways to do that, I think, is to start to really focus on whatever it is that lights you up inside of you, what's purposeful, what's meaningful to you, and follow that.
Yes, it's a great thing to do. What is that I'm about? I'm here on earth to do something, and what is my purpose? I had quite a few sessions about purpose, and it's incredible. Sometimes people say, I'm hyperactive, can't stop with anything, but other times it's just so much coming on in our life, and we don't know why we're doing this. And I remember years ago I had a very nice collection of coaching books, and there was this story of this guy that went to a very famous coach, and he said, I'm so fed up, I have 2 jobs and I work the whole day. He was earning well, and he had a wife and a daughter, and all this tran every day, the routine, the this and that. And I just want a change. Maybe I need a different job. Maybe I need to move abroad. Maybe this. Maybe I don't have a purpose. And to cut this short, in the end of a coaching session, it turned out, or NLP session, whatever, it turned out that the coach gave back all the words to this guy until he realized that he actually was doing the 2 jobs. Because he decided straight away when he got married, I want to give my wife the most beautiful house. And then when they had a daughter, I said, I want to send her to the best schools. She deserves what I didn't have. She's going to go to the best schools, get a really good education. I'm going to make her have a very wonderful time, nice holidays. And to do that, he had to do 2 jobs. So that if you work on 2 jobs, you're going to have, hopefully, pretty much twice as much income, and therefore he was able to afford a very incredibly nice lifestyle. And so the reason why he was running the whole day was so they could all have a really beautiful, comfortable lifestyle and enjoy holidays and enjoy a wonderful house when they had parties and things. And once he realized, I'm actually doing this because I love my wife, so I'm showing my love in this way. And his whole paradigm shifted completely, and he went home and said, I don't need to change job. I'm so happy. I'm doing this for my wife and for my daughter. I thought it was incredible.
I love that. It's almost like more, would you say like more clarity is what he ended up maybe needing or getting, and that shifted everything for him.
I thought it was incredible. If there was any other suggestion, you have a couple of minutes. Did you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that. Is a lot of the times, it comes down to that paradigm shift, doesn't it? Where it's just like sometimes just even going back to what you were mentioning with the stories we tell ourselves, is a lot of the times people might not even realize that they're telling themselves a certain story, right? So it could just be getting the clarity itself. Oh, I've been telling myself this story for how long now? That can be like a splash of cold water in the face and be the catalyst for that paradigm shift. So yeah.
I have to say, because I'm an artist and photographer, I devoted the very first 7 episodes of his podcast 3 years ago to becoming an artist. And I do talk to them on all the possible forums, etc. And you will see these people that for many, many years say, I really wanted to do art, I wanted to do drama, I wanted to do drawing and painting, but I could never do it. I went to the wrong school, I couldn't do it. And then I got sent here and there, I couldn't do it. When I got married and I had small children, I couldn't do it. And now I'm 50 and 60 and 70. I feel I have not fulfilled what I wanted. And I don't know how to get started. And I always say, what is the story you're telling yourself? You have to just do it. You have to stop everything and think, where can I put 10 minutes a day to start sketching or playing an instrument or whatever the art was. And then start saying, how can I put this into my routine? How can I? Because you found the way of taking care of all these children, etc., husbands and or wives or whatever. How can you put this space in? So the question to ask yourself is not why I cannot do, but what can I do to make this happen? And once I start saying to myself, what can I do? When can I do? How can I do? All the RAS system changes, the filtering changes, and I start seeing opportunities instead of blockages and walls. And I start thinking, well, actually, when I'm taking my daughter to school for 4 hours, I can join the local adult education class and I can do something there. And they become all animated and I'm so happy. It doesn't matter if I don't become, Paul Newman or the most famous illustrator in the world, but we are doing what they really wanted to do. And finally, we are realizing, it's me. The only person that can live my life. And you know what? A lot of my clients have been waiting for permission for somebody to tell them that they can do this, because they wouldn't give it to themselves.
I like that. Yeah, for sure. Because you think about the kid, and I know obviously being an adult, you're much busier, probably. But the kid's never looking, well, maybe at least not initially, is never looking for the permission, right? That kid who draws, that paints, that acts, that sings, that plays. It's a free flow stream, and it's about getting people back to that playful place.
Yes.
For sure.
Completely
But giving
different.
them that permission.
And I love that the kids are so, open to do everything and trying everything. But we're, as adults, I failed this 20 years ago, so I'm never going to do it again. You're kidding. I'm going to try again until I get it. That's me, trying everything, doing courses. I'm doing my first certificate of roller skating. I'm 58. Hey, we're going to have to do things, because why? I'm always on free fall courses. Why? Because when I was young, I didn't like this. Now I like learning. So I'm catching up.
Right there with you. Yeah, learning's where it's at.
Yes, you have to do it.
Expansion. Yeah.
Yeah,
expansion.
And the more you learn, the more you realize, wow, this is exciting. There's so much I can do to help others as well. Because, of course, the more you learn, the more you are in power. Education is power, and not just education from university, but just learning, listening to people, experimenting, playing, and everything is learning. So I wanted to thank you so much for your time. Where do we find it? I found your website called Hypnosis Toronto.
So the best place to find me would be www.paulnorrish, that's NORRISH.online. And you can find me there.
All right, so guys, we're going to have to say thank you so much to Paul, because it was a great time to talk about a few things that we might encounter in our life. So thank you so much for being with us, Paul.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Franz.
Thank you, guys. We only have 2 minutes to close, and then I have more recording with another person, so I will be rushing like mad today. That's my day for rushing. But I hope that you found some good pearls of wisdom today, and that you might want to reach to me or to Paul Norrish to have maybe a discovery call, maybe just a chat. There is no, pressure to sell anything. It's just to see if we can help you or not. And just even a question. We're always happy to help you. And to see if you can maybe do this shift and move forward to the next bit of your life. Because I think there is nothing worse than living a life of regret and saying, if only I've done this, if only I've done that. That's the worst life to live. We want to live life to the full. That's my mantra. We have to do it. So thank you for being with us. And of course, if you like this episode, please share it with your friends. Write a good review on Apple, iTunes, and whatever else, so that the podcast can be known to more people, so we can help more people. And we're about to celebrate 3 years of podcasting, plus 5 years in the radio, so there will be 8 years in front of a microphone, which is, that's what you get with chatty people. Talk. But we love doing that, and we love helping the community with anything we can. So thank you again, and I'll see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You listen to Create with Fran Sidney.